Resume.
All
I don't
right,
see adjustments to the agenda, but when you get to there, I do have a possible adjustment to the agenda.
That it can, yeah, it can happen right in the public comment.
Okay.
Start in.
all right. So 5:35, call to order, and it looks like we've got everybody here, so we've got the quorum. And jump right into public comment.
Did we have somebody? You said online?
Thought that was you.
Oh,
No.
God, just me?
Yeah.
I'm
No,
the
yeah,
public.
no public comment, but my understanding of the way that we, the modified version of Robert's rules that our committees seem to operate under. The appropriate time to propose an addition to a warrant agenda is right at the start, essentially. After or during or just before the public comment period. So
Any additions?
Yes, I would like to propose added agenda item to discuss possibly some possibility of a possibility of some shared funding for Act 250 permits for the trails out at the forest. So
great. So depending on how formally you want to be, I think you could motion to add to the agenda. Or maybe we don't care. You
I need to. You go.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. So Drew, any thoughts on when you'd like to slip that into the agenda?
Let's see, we got Tony at 6.
Yeah, Tony's at 6. That's the only really kind of fixed.
How much time do you need?
2.5 minutes.
You want to do it after Tony?
That
and then
quick, okay.
I mean, yeah, let's put it, pencil it in after Tony. If we have time before Tony, we can do that too.
Sure, that sounds good. So ready to support.
May I add another item? I don't know, we can just do it in like side discussion too. Ticks, I don't know, just seeing all the chatter on Front Porch Forum about ticks.
I'm against them.
To deer, related to deer and deer hunting and when we ever do get back to the updated management plan. So just like 60 seconds on what I saw and the thought that like, I don't have any proposal, but I thought that that's something that should stay on my radar. So I could do that in like a minute or two also.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, why don't we put that in just at kind of the end, the sort of other business, and we can that I imagine that would probably set up like more substantial discussion about policy for the next update. So
Policies against ticks. I'm good with that.
Yeah.
And
Ban them. No ticks in the forest. Unless
We're
I
fans of wildlife,
we can find them.
but not ticks.
That's how we'll find our public schools, finding ticks for trespass.
So there are no public comments, correct?
No.
All right, so minutes.
All right. Kim, did the view just change over? You seeing the minutes?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I love it when that works out. All right,
Does everybody look through them or
we need to scan the minutes. They're up on the screen. Otherwise,
They looked good to me.
I move to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, moving on, great minutes.
all right. So John is away and Amanda could not join us, but Amanda sent me a detailed email with plenty of updates. So I will speak for the Catamount Outdoor Family Center update on behalf of Amanda. All right, so trails remain closed at Catamount for mud season. Difficult to predict when they will reopen, but they have signs on site, verbiage online asking folks to use Governor Chittenden Road, durable surfaces. They're monitoring conditions, open up trails as soon as they can. Staffing and operations, John, Andy, Amanda, and John Joe. But I don't think I've met yet.
Jeho,
Jeho, okay.
Yeah. maybe.
Thanks for
Yeah.
clarifying that. Jeho are still the core team. Andy and Jeho are working on seasonal changes. Just change over the trails. John and Amanda are well into full interviews for the new full-time position, the Community Engagement and Systems Manager. And application deadline is tomorrow, so it sounds like it's moving right along. Some very strong candidates, which is exciting. Amanda has a call, is just that one day remaining, but if anyone has a candidate in mind or wants to share the posting, Amanda sent me the link and I can share that with you. They've wrapped up summer camp interviews, so they have a full team lined up for 2026. They're very excited about, especially that their balance of female identifying leaders is been greatly increased. Amanda noted that historically staff ratios were very male heavy, 80%, 20%, and now it's closer to 60-40, or even in some cases 50-50. There are, due to a donation from a board member, they have new binoculars and they'll be renting out binoculars for the season. So anyone who comes to Catamount who wants to go bird watching doesn't have their own pair, which is very cool. And programs and races. Summer camp registrations continue to come in. They've surpassed last season's camper count, which is very exciting. Catamount mountain bike clubs kick off next month. Guided weekly races kick off May 11th. Weekly races kick off May 12th and 13th. So we're kind of in the mud season lull with activity really expected to kick off in early May. Upcoming April and May events include Andy's volunteer trail work series kicking off this weekend. That's exciting. A spring gravel ride in early May, other events in early May. Permits and projects. Amanda, I can fill in some details. We're close to completing and submitting those permits. I'm working with John to try to get those across the finish line. And we met, the town working group met with, which is Jean and Hans or Alan, a representative of the board, John, myself, and Amanda, if she's available, and Eric Wells, the town manager. We've had 2 meetings with the 2 federal funding partners who provided funds to conserve Catamount. We mentioned this last time. That's the Land and Water Conservation Fund and the Community Forest Fund, which is the U.S. Forest Service program. And both those meetings went really well. The Community Forest Program took a look at the building proposal and said, this fits within our program. You know, the limited exceptions that exist for putting a building on a site. There's no conversion of forest. We had no concerns, and we're excited to hear about how the project goes. And furthermore, when essentially the 2 things that have been checked with the programs are, can we put a building on this site? And is the use proposal of this building going to work for the program with all of its various restrictions? And in the community forest program, they said the proposed use by Catamount doesn't present any concerns for them with regards to hosting events and renting the space out for events, provided that the building is never fully exclusive, that there's access there if members of the public need to come in and can use the building. It's the primary purpose of the building is recreation. So that was really good news from that program. We were anticipating good news from that program as they're a little less restrictive. And the meeting with the Land and Water Conservation Fund staff, which is actually state staff that administers that program, also went positively, but with some more caveats. So they said this building, with regards to its primary purpose, works for the program. A structure that's primary purpose is supporting outdoor recreation is gonna pass all the checks. What they had some reservations on was with regards to the proposed use plan around events and renting it out for secondary events, including weddings. So that piece, the state representative of that grant program, John sent kind of a description of what's been proposed. similar to the similar to the requirement from the community forest program to make sure that the building, even in the event of being rented out for rent, is still open in some way and available to the public. That was a condition that Land and Water Conservation Fund said, that's kind of the starting point. But there's still some questions about what they will approve and whether to what degree they will allow that kind of use. So the state representative of the program essentially goes to the federal representative of the program and says, here's our situation, here's what's being proposed. How can you work with us? And so we'll get news on that. We're expecting sometime this month. And that will kind of inform next steps and what we look at in terms of how things will work for Catamount and what we can kind of do next. So that's the update on the working group and the permits. And 2 other quick updates. How are we doing on time? Fine. So May 2nd, green update. I know the committee's gonna touch base about that.
Before we leave the working group.
Yep, sure.
If you're going to the trails, but the way I read it, I thought that the land and water conservation was kind of like, with a lot of these things, maybe, but I gotta talk to the lawyers and we'll get back to you. And the other guys were like, if you can get it past them, you can get it past us.
Yeah.
So,
That's good stuff.
I would, just for this group, wearing which hat I'm wearing, but the select board has requested of the outdoor family center sort of, a business plan around basically, how do we know you'll be able to support a building, like let alone building the building, like how are you does your business plan support maintaining, it's just sort of it's gonna be a liability to the town if they can't be successful, so they're working on that. Alan said he's working on that. So that's sort of another hoop. Otherwise, it does seem like the concerns are kind of, some of them, we're addressing sort of the bureaucratic is such a bad name, but some of the bureaucracy around getting the building to be viable.
Yeah.
So it feels positive, at least we're making progress, and I think, can't speak for John, but I think he's feeling a little less frustrated that things are starting to move. Or is that fair?
I think that's fair. Considering that at early points in this discussion, it was an unknown whether these programs would say yes to having a building. I'd say it's actually a pretty substantial difference just getting that word back from both programs. That the concept for this building, the scope, the size of the building, its primary purpose are thumbs up from both donor programs is really big news. So the question now, as Gene was alluding to, is if restrictions come down from Land and Water Conservation Fund on the proposed use, can Catamount adjust its planned model in some way that is still going to work for Catamount, or do we need to look at other potential solutions to make sure that that support structure can still happen in some way?
Theoretically, you could carve out the property that building is gonna sit on and swap it for other land in the town, so that the restrictions would be different at least.
Yeah.
I assume they'd be gone, but they could at least be different
Right.
if you carved out the property, so it's not part of the land and water conservation
Yeah.
easement. But you
Does it have to be
apply-
contiguous or
Yeah.
it just can be any? Oh, that's interesting. That's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
not the same ecosystem function, but okay.
No, it is. It does sound like it's a little bit of a complicated process. We'd have to work with the program. It's not something that they expect. They said executing that typically takes years, plural.
Right, because the town has to raise money to go buy another piece of property,
Yeah.
right? But
And-
we have a conservation fund that already has money in it, so there could be ways that shortchange it, but they also said it didn't have to. Didn't have to happen before you could start the building. Like if we had a plan, the town had a plan that we have all this plan to raise this, bringing money in so we can conserve other property for recreation. We could build the building and then do the carve out 5 years from now or something, but it's just, it's there, but the best The best solution would be if the Land and Water Conservation Fund said like, hey, as long as the building's not exclusive, you can have a private event. But if that gets stickier, there's at least one other less easy
Right.
path.
Right, yeah, and yeah, there are a couple stipulations about the land swap that make it a little trickier. You can't set aside land that is already used for recreation in some way. So it has to be, the land swap has to be equal in dollar value, not size. So assessed dollar value, they use a specific assessment process. And then it has to be land that the town has purchased for some other purpose. So for example, it has to land maybe that we purchased for stormwater or some kind of community use. And then we're converting that land to forever recreation, forever public recreation. So it is a little trickier than just saying, okay, well, the town owns a bunch of land and we
Yeah.
have some conservation land. that
We'll
we
put a
can
trail
use
through that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways,
Right.
moving forward, I think everyone's feeling a little happier about that we're making progress instead of sort of the litany of John's frustration that we were getting for a long time. Thank you, David, I know you're doing a lot of work in the background to
Yeah.
move things forward. So-
Appreciate
And, you know, and the trail permits too, I think is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're gonna get back to trails
Really
permits, because that was the other
appreciate it,
thing we were,
Yeah, trail permits is, yeah, it's been good at plugging into that process and just kind of seeing what still need to be done, and we got some good news there. Which is that since John has scaled back the magnitude of potential wetland impacts, the project actually qualifies for a lower tier wetland permit, which makes that permit process a little easier. So that was good news, but we still had to change over the application, and so we're just trying to get some that finished up. And then on Act 250, we're waiting on word from the district coordinator about whether we can waive some of the requirements that are kind of aimed at what would be a more traditional residential building project, but which for the scope of a large trails project don't make as much sense and could be kind of burdensome to map out. An example of that is Act 250 permit typically calls for erosion control and prevention plan, which if it was required to map out the location of every water bar and silt fence, it would be very burdensome, very difficult to do. So we're hoping that requirements like that don't seem to translate to this kind of projects could be waived, and we'll find out what is required, hopefully very soon. So that's kind of the update on Catamount, and then the town Catamount Outdoor Family Center working group. As of last week,
this week.
yeah, great. Okay, so that was the last of, Amanda had a note about Green Up Day and a comment about the memo, but each of those can happen in their respective agenda items. So I'll stop there because we're now 3 minutes behind.
So yeah, upcoming events, use requests, there was something about bird walks.
Yes, okay, so let's change over again the share screen here. And I've connected with Terry Marin, who has connected with all of last year's Birdwalk partners that put on the Birdwalk series. That includes the Wilson Library, the Green Mountain Audubon Society, and North Branch Nature Center, which is great because we weren't sure we were going to get North Branch back. So I put all of those on the spreadsheet that was created before my time. We looked at this last year for the parallel of these events. They're essentially the exact same description, timing, more or less same timing and proposal and same involved parties as last year. So these are proposed for, that's 2025. So oops, sorry about that.
What did you mean get them back? Do they?
North Branch Nature Center was very frustrated with the town's liability and
Oh.
certificate of insurance
Yeah,
requirements
an ongoing problem.
regarding such a low risk event.
Yeah.
and they really jumped through a bunch of hoops, and they weren't sure if they were gonna come back, so. We're glad to have them back, especially because North Branch Nature Center is directed by Sean Beckett, who's a longtime Willistonian. And we're excited to have Sean come back.
Right.
So.
Just before we move forward, do we feel like I feel like stories like that, it would be great to capture their to like make sure we just have a record of their thinking because I feel like I don't know, I just think it would be good for us to be like, what has the full impact of some of the insurance things been, not just like, I don't know, like bike events.
Hey there.
Yeah, that's a good point, Kim. I did share that comment with town leadership when we were talking about kind of policies for this year, and I need to touch base on if anything has been decided around that, but yeah, I don't know, comment further, but it may be that some of those requirements can be relaxed a little bit this year or have been relaxed, but I don't know the answer. Great, okay, so welcome to Tony. We'll get to the forest research update in just a bit, but to wrap this up, so it's, you know, the current policy that for this particular channel of events that are kind of sponsored by the town to be reviewed by the committee in the spreadsheet, and for the last 2 years that's really just been this birding series. So the North Branch Nature Center walk is tentatively scheduled for 5:15. May 16th, the next day, would be the library walk, all in the morning, and then June 6th would be the Green Mountain Audubon Society, and followed up by another fall walk on the 8th. So I'll need to share this information with Amanda to make sure that all that's received. There aren't any concerns or conflicts, but last year that seemed to work out well. We'll make sure those votes are posted. So any questions or comments from committee?
Not specific to the birds, but it just makes me think that we have these great events for birding, but we don't have anything specific to, say, forestry or, you know, educating people about invasive species and how to identify them, what you do about them, and maybe going forward we can find somebody who can lead some sort of similar event. I don't know if it's Chittenden County Forester or who, somebody from UVM perhaps. But there's a great opportunity to sort of increase the public's awareness of forestry and invasives and other issues at Catamount that is not on that list right there. And
I think that's a great
think about how we can do that.
Yeah, and that's something that aligns with your discussions about kind of monitoring the different goals and priorities of the forest and using partnerships to expand your capacity. I know Terry's very happy to continue helming this bird watching piece, which she's really passionate about. And I know in the past there were other people that kind of filled those niche folks that were on the committee previously, or the previous county forester Ethan Tapper really helmed a lot of that forestry education work. So I think that's a good idea that aligns with the recent conversation.
There were some geology walks as well,
That'd be very cool.
and archaeology.
Sounds great. I don't know. But just,
I do wonder if Laura maybe is a good, like, if the Master Naturalist program is a way to recruit people to do that, because I think they have to do some amount of outreach, right? As
She was
part
the
of
one that led
program.
this geology. She led the
Yeah.
geology, yeah.
yeah, they for folks that are actively doing the VMN program, they have to do 20 hours of community projects, typically in the host town. Or if it's when a VMN also does these kind of regional focus, so they have people from different towns. But that could be a great way to channel that that community effort is, you know, task one of those members to put together an education series or a small group of them. It's a great idea.
Get Chapin back out there.
We actually, I think the select board funded paying the tuition for
That's right.
for several residents of Williston who want to do that program, so.
Yeah,
Feels
so
like an
this-
easy way to say like, and you're gonna do at
Yeah.
least half of your hours. you know.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
good point.
yeah.
I can convey that to the Conservation Commission. Now that the budget's been passed and that's, I think the appeal period has passed on that, or is pretty
Yeah,
close to
It's
passing,
done,
so.
yeah.
Yeah, that's finalized, so we can continue that discussion,
Yeah.
and I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
That'll be coming up. So one last thing, just on your radar is, now these aren't formal events, they weren't reviewed in this, through this process last year, but the three kind of the three different groups of community members that either are formal volunteer programs or just community interest programs that monitor birds at Catamount are all going to be starting up too. So I just want to put that on your radar. The bobolink monitoring group is scheduled to start their first Thursday on May 7th. They walk on the southern parcel around Field C, which is the bobolink field. And I know Danielle and I got out there last year to walk with them, which is great. And I don't know, Drew, if you've been out there, but I definitely encourage if anyone wants to see what they're about. It is really enjoyable to join them. And spring mornings at Catamount are great times to birds. Nest Watch programs also scheduled to kick off in early May. And the duck monitoring group starts a little earlier, and they just started earlier today. This year, Reed Parker is training up a new batch of 4 volunteers to assist him. So he's kind of done it all himself in the past, but is ready to accept a little bit of help, and was really excited to have get a lot of interest in the community for that. So
Are they, they expressed concern previously on like the town's process for scheduling to be there as a volunteer. Is that a pain point for them still? Like, we don't want obstacles for them to continue to do this.
yeah,
Which the first thought I had was, I'm glad, like, this is what I think the committee should do, like, make sure we've got a pulse of each of these people on an annual basis, that the program continues to be run. Like, we don't want to wake up 5 years from now and be like, oh, nobody's done anything to those duck boxes, where'd Reed go? So I think that's like a really valuable thing for this committee to like keep a pulse on these things. And if, you know, and then if Reed does move on and he hasn't found a successor, we can like promote that and try to continue some of these nice programs. But my question was on the
yeah.
process. That
On
was
the
a pain
process.
point for them.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think that my understanding since I've been here just the last year is that the 2 historical pain points with these programs were access to Catamount during mud season and just some communication conflicts with the volunteer groups and the Catamount Outdoor Family Center around how to get around the trails and the area during mud season. And myself, looking back through the minutes, I think it was 2024, probably mostly you were here, had a conversation and approved a memo recommending just some processes that can help mitigate that. And it's I checked in with Catamount Outdoor Family Center staff at the start of this season and touched base on that memo. It sounds like that plan is going to continue to work. The one thing they would like to see is some permanent signage at the hub that they can roll out around this time of year that says, you know, here's what's going on with these bird boxes, and here's why you might see some people out
Even though the trails are
around the
closed.
trails, even though the trails are closed.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that could be worked on, and there's, I think it would probably fit with the funding that for out of your regular budget for the year, if it can be done before the end of the fiscal year. And then the second pain point related to just the town's policies around notice and just a lot of communication hassle back and forth. And some of that has been relaxed after last year or so. It was determined after some communication with town manager's office that, you know, relatively passive monitoring of bird boxes is a very low risk activity, and the previous, you know, 48 hours notice every time you go out was maybe a little excessive. So that's been relaxed.
Oh, good.
And for going out and moving boxes or doing maintenance on boxes that is using tools, the town would still like 48 hours notice. And I'm kind of integrated into those processes, so trying to work with the groups to make sure that they have updated waivers for the year and know what the town is looking for in terms of processes. So I think that is hopefully a little smoother.
Nice.
All right, any other last questions on
With our new
Birds.
strategic focus, would that have been a topic we would deal with? in
It's
the future?
just like you just dealt with it, that's all we needed.
All right, well, with that, I'm very pleased that you've all, has everyone met Tony before?
Only on the screen, I think.
Okay, well, very pleased to welcome Professor Tony D'Amato from the University of Vermont to provide an update about forest research and whatever you'd like to include, but I think folks were wondering, kind of recap of what happened out there last season, maybe a bit of a preview about what you're looking forward to this season, and
Sure.
Thanks for coming.
I don't have the Zoom link.
Oh,
if you want
okay.
me to share it.
yeah, let me send that to you real quick. I should have put that. I'm gonna stop my share.
I can show it to Kim tomorrow at work if.
No, I think that's great. I will I'll just
I
email it.
feel I like got home just in time to log on, and now I'm like embarrassed that I didn't just walk down the road.
Well, let's get stuck. Thank you. All right, Tony, here's the
Saw some of your students walking around out there last year. They had big smiles on their faces.
Yeah.
That's how they were quite happy to be doing what they were doing.
Start of the week.
I told them I was pretty jealous.
Yeah, actually, we ended up it was during that week with the air quality
Oh, yeah.
issues. And so they had been working at Camel Swamp doing work, and they felt like the terrain was such that it might be better to come to Catamount and work then, so. We had a rushed, the late alert of John, so it was the one hiccup of the season was that day. I was gonna say, I think one thing that was really great about our meeting last year was just to really establish communication and make sure that we were respectful of any activities that the outdoor center had going, and making sure that we gave advance notice. So it was just good. And as we talked about last year, when Ethan left, it kind of created this void of communication that I didn't really recognize was happening between, what we were doing and what was being conveyed to John and others. So
How often are you guys out there?
what's that?
Oh, did
Yeah, I
you-
think I'm like in it.
Oh, you're
So,
okay.
my screen is like showing.
So yeah, we switched over. I just have to promote you to panelists. We switched over to webinars after a couple of
Zoom bombs.
successive Zoom bombs. So
So
we
we
just have to accept panelists. There should be invite.
Let me do it again, Dave. There you go. So, yeah, in terms of, I'll give a kind of a rough overview of like when we're gonna be out there again, but we were just out there, I was just out there with, in March with, actually late February with the, forest and field class from CVU. It's the second year they've gone out. Dave, I'm trying to blank on his last name, is the,
Terrific.
yeah, he's an instructor, and so there were 25 students. We all snowshoed out there, and so second year we've used the site,
Nice.
and it was good. Yeah, it was a good day, and the skiing was great, so we made sure we stayed out of the way of everybody that was out there. Let's share. I'm not allowed to share yet.
Oh, really?
Here.
Oh, there you go. Sorry about that.
Who's the teacher? Do you remember the name of the teacher?
Dave.
Dave Trevick,
How do you spell
Treve, pick.
that? It might be somebody interesting to have,
It's true.
It's a cool class.
they could be partners of ours of some sort.
They seem to do a lot, everything from ice fishing to snowshoeing and, different activities.
High school has changed since I
I
went.
know.
Yes. I think it's like the seniors, because it's a Friday when they have a free block.
Oh, that's great.
Sure. Oh, yeah. I think I'm still attached to something else.
No worries.
There you go.
That's right.
Okay, great. Yes, thanks again, and not to jump in the weeds there, but it was a great meeting last year to just get a better handle on how to make sure that we're, you know, enhancing the value of the forest, but not getting in the way of kind of broader goals there. And so, I'll kind of recap some of the history of the project, you know, what we did this year, and then share a little bit of results, just some of the information we've collected, so you can see what's going on out there, and then what the plans are for this year and the next several years. So just the history again, obviously, as mentioned, a lot of this was initiated when Ethan was still Chittenden County Forester. I actually haven't been out here yet with Brandon Benedict, but he's the new county forester. And so the project was designed in January 2020. We put in those permanent vegetation plots, and I'll show in a minute, but I think some of you remember we have the same work happening on Talcott Research Forest. So there's that small 90-acre research forest that UVM owns that actually has access via, well, we actually have access to it through the golf course parking lot from one side, and then, you know, the Catamount trails, you know, kind of link up to it from there, and I'll show it on a map in a second. And so both of those were harvested in fall one through 2023. I'll talk about the planting. I know many of you are familiar with that, but all the flagging out there and tree cages that happened in 2024. Then this last summer, we measured the plots. I'll explain in a second. Some collaborators we worked with at UVM did drone-based acquisition of LiDAR data, so really high resolution canopy height and elevational data on the site, and then bird data collection as well. So as I mentioned, there's kind of two places we kind of view as the experimental areas, so that the larger is that core portion of the north end of the Catamount community forest, and then there's that southern end that's a section of that Talcott forest. So again, just to orient, must be familiar with this, but you know, we kind of park at the golf course to get access to it. There is a right of way that was controversial when we did that harvest that we've had since we acquired the property. Like everything else, people don't realize it's there until we need to bring in equipment and put a right of way. So, but we were able to access that without having to go, you know, drive on fairways and greens with equipment. But both are pretty similar geologically, and the forests are pretty similar. You know, pine, hemlock, and oak. So those are the two spots we've been working. And again, and those dots are where we collect the permanent vegetation, the tree data and other data. So the drone piece. So in June, on one day, their sampling's quick. We work with a spatial analysis lab. They're in the Rubenstein School. They're really, I would say, if not regional, like these national leaders and using drones to rapidly acquire information from the air. So when the state unfortunately has things like floods or the train derailment, any of that work, they're really good at getting out there, taking pictures of what's going on with drones. But they also have really high powered sensors that can monitor, you know, vegetation and other things in terms of like what are the height of the trees and what's the level of, you know, foliage out that can maybe tell us the health of the trees, et cetera. So they can do a lot quickly and learn a lot about the forest. And so they flew kind of the footprint of that part of the forest here. If I go down with this drone, this picture is not from June at Catamount, but this is the drone itself. And it looks like not like much, but there's a lot of equipment and money on the end of that, taking imagery. And this is actually looking down from the top, just at canopy height. So these are the areas where they've removed trees. So you can see like the space in between trees. And then the darker areas are more, you know, closed canopy areas where they haven't done anything. So I put a line across that, and I'm going to show a profile view of what it looks like in terms of like the actual data they collect for height. So every one of these dots is when like the sensor comes down from the drone, bounces back up to the drone, and just via some simple math that, you know, the drone measures how long did it take for that point to get back up to us. And so if you know the height of the drone, you can figure out the height of that point. So most people that do this work are most interested in the ground surface.
Yeah,
So if you see really high detailed, like topographic maps, digital elevation models, they can create really great maps of that. So we do have the ground surface as well, but tree people are more interested in the noise that blocks the ground. So with you can this transect, if we look at this going across, so it goes from closed canopy, so you can see the really dense forest here. So this is the ground, these are the top of the trees. And as it goes into the areas where there's harvest, you can see that there's like spaces and it's actually picking up like the shrubs and lower vegetation. And then you go back into the closed canopy areas. And those of you that ski or bike back here also can see those little gullies and the topography changing there. So it's really useful for us. As much as I like to still be measuring trees from the ground, you can't measure every tree, whereas this can actually give you really nice continuous estimates of what does the forest look like. And that's really valuable, especially for things like birds and other organisms that are kind of using the whole slice, not just the place you're measuring at a local scale. Questions on the drone stuff? Yeah.
I assume you could do year to year.
You can, exactly, yeah. And what's kind of neat is this is where a lot, again, knowing his background as well, like all of us get into the field because we like being out there measuring things. But slow and expensive, and they're really moving a lot towards still needing to be out there in the woods. But this gives you a chance to, like, literally daily, if you wanted to, you could get new images. And so when there's some sort of forest health event or a windstorm or a flood, or you're trying to figure out how the best route to get into an area when there's like maybe wetter conditions, or it's really a rapid and an accurate way of doing things. And so it's growing, and you multiply this by artificial intelligence, and there's a lot you can do with it. So we're lucky to have folks at UVM that we work with, and that the state does as well, that help us out with this stuff.
Will that be done annually?
We'll probably do it every few years because we probably won't see a ton of change year to year. It just takes a while for the trees to grow back. But probably every couple of years we'll have them go back out and do it. And they're doing this at all the other research sites we work at, which then allows us to get a better handle on, like, how the forest changing more broadly. So.
And it's one drone?
It is, yeah, and they're great about, I mean, as people know, you can fly drones and not let the FAA know and totally violate FAA regulations. They're all licensed, and so they only fly where they can see the drone. So it's a little bit trickier in the woods because they have to always be able to have a line of sight. In a place like Catamount that doesn't have a ton of topographic relief where they are, it's a little bit slower. But they're changing some of the regs. The reason I'm saying that in response to your question is that where a couple drones very quickly could measure it, even they could stand up in the parking lot in the future, just let the drone go down there and do it and not be able to see it, because they would have the route basically programmed. But right now, the FAA regulations say you have to like have a line of sight, just in case it goes really high and interferes with a plane or something. But it takes probably to do this. It probably took them an hour and a half with a line of sight. If they didn't, I bet you they could do it in 25 minutes, just because it's the drone's just gonna do it. So
you have this data over time compared to other areas where you've done similar work. Like what would be a significant finding? Like, oh wow, the trees are growing.
yeah,
We expect the trees to, are they growing too fast? They're growing too slow? Are they growing the wrong kinds? Or like what would be a finding that would be interesting?
Probably kind of a couple that come to mind. One is this gives you a really fine scale like characterizations of the structure of the forest. So as I was mentioning, if I go back, like these points here, the dots on the map, that's a 1/10 or 400 square meter plot, and we're measuring all the trees in that plot. So we're getting very detailed information. But there's only 10 of those in a 10-acre area, so you're only capturing so much of the variability in a forest. And so if there's a bird that's really responding to that forest, but it's not necessarily responding to our plots, it's maybe responding to something that the drone can pick up better. Like it's really these, I don't know, 100-foot stretches where the canopy goes up and down, up and down, up and down, that matters most to that bird. Or likewise, we're doing work in the Northeast Kingdom where we're actually looking at snowpack duration and kind of like how the canopy affects like the duration of snowpack. As we all appreciate, like a little bit of an opening is actually not a bad thing, because you get more snow to the ground. but there's still enough shade to keep it intact. But trying to understand like how does that snowpack kind of drift over that area? Having like estimates of that canopy cover and even like snow depth from the drone allows you to pick up on more of like really what's happening. I mean, it's digital, but it's a better representation of like the three-dimensional space of a forest over a large area. So it would a significant finding would be, you know, that we're actually detecting, you know, it's actually these broader scale conditions that matter more for this bird or for snowpack. Or to the tree growth piece, you know, well, a windstorm comes through here, or let's say there's some outbreak of the next thing we're worried about.
Mm.
And it really seems like these areas here aren't being as impacted as much, or when they are impacted, they grow back faster. And so the drone is another way of collecting that data that we're doing in the plots that might just allow you to get more of a complete picture. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot you're missing, like the wildflowers and, you know, all the things you need to be still out there looking at, but it gives you the ability to more fully capture that forest. That's just as fun as it would be, to measure every tree out there, you know, as you know, it's just, you can't be doing it forever.
There was a pair of red-shouldered hawks in the last year raising young in
Oh, neat.
in one of the clearings.
Cool. Using one of those pines.
Yeah.
And I'll talk about the bird data they've collected out there as well. And it's good for our students too, just to bring it back to the education mission, even the CBU students, we talked a little bit about this, that, you know, everybody knows enough about drones these days, but, you know, this is kind of how you can use it even for your own work. So the seedlings, always you know, because of the flagging and even, you know, definitely poor communication at the time of us planting them. We're an area of focus. But part of what we're doing out there is trying to think through how to address climate change impacts. And so that's often thinking about, you know, the current tree species that are there, and then also, you know, are there either local species that are going to do better that we might want to increase, or are there species somewhat local but not quite here that might do better, kind of like a change in your zone map for perennials. So a couple of years ago, as I mentioned, we planted, you know, 946 trees across 8 different species. And I just put, I mentioned this last year, parenthetically, what they represent in terms of the different forms of assisted migration. So a lot of them are what we call assisted population migration, which is essentially just moving that tree species within its current range. And often what we're doing is taking genotypes, so populations maybe from south, and just moving those north. And so the idea being, let's say the white pine at Catamount is, you know, pretty well adapted to the site. But if I use white pine from, I don't know, let's say Randolph, Vermont, those genetics actually contain some genes that might be better adapted to a future warmer climate. So by having those out there over time, those genes might mix and there'll be more kind of adaptation of that species. So that's an example of assisted population migration, and we're doing that with some species, especially red oak. I'll show that in a second. A few are the more kind of, for lack of better, controversial forms of range expansion, where it's basically we call it assisted range expansion, and you move the trees to where they would get to if they could run as fast as climate's changing. You know, trees move like at 0.2 to 0.6 miles per year. Climate's changing at about 2 to 4 miles per year. And so they're just not going to like naturally be able to track that. So the idea being, if we could put them where they would be able to get to if they were like naturally marching with the change, they'd get there. So a couple of species we planted out there: chestnut oak, American chestnut, shagbark hickory. So I'll show the survival so far, which actually has been good. I think we've had 2 good years to be a seedling. We've had other years where we've planted trees, and this is always an embarrassing slide to show, but we've had a couple of good years. We've learned a lot too in terms of how to do this, just to have pretty good success. So the one graph for the day. So I have percent survival, and then the dashed line is the overall average survival across everything we planted. So, you know, a little bit under 90% survival for all trees, and then everything by species. And so you'll notice for red oak, those are state names. And so out there, believe it or not, there's red oak from Delaware, New Hampshire, New York, Virginia, and Vermont. So we're comparing, you know, different sources of red oak seedling. And then for the red spruce that's out there, that's actually from Massachusetts. It's from north central Massachusetts. And so, you know, overall, good rates of survival. the ones that are doing more poorly, chestnut oak, that's one that's not
Mm.
currently present on the site, and so maybe it didn't like how cold it got, you know, and especially if there's not snow yet and it gets cold, or sometimes they break bud too early and then we still get a late season frost that knocks them back. And the New York and Vermont survival. So the New York, this is actually from their state nursery. And so we just felt the seedlings weren't great. So maybe it's nothing to do with New York other than they weren't awesome seedlings. Vermont, that's actually a Newport source. So it's from like really far. This is from the kingdom. And so it's probably would prefer maybe to not be as warm, you know, as it is here in the valley. So I think it's a poor representation of what Vermont can do. Whereas New Hampshire is from
Firestone.
yeah.
Seedlings.
That bar is gonna look a lot better next year. The New Hampshire source is, you know, from you know, Concord, kind of central New Hampshire. So it's, you know, if you looked at climatically the valley versus that area, actually kind of some similarities. So a little bit more snow there, but anyhow, so
If you were migrating ahead of climate change, it wouldn't do that well now.
right.
But if you can keep them alive, it might do better.
100%.
Yeah.
And that's the idea. I mean, when we talk about this, I mean, you know how much is out there for planting. It's a small part of the broader picture of what we're trying to do.
Right.
And so if 2% of these trees survive 50 years, you know, I would assume in 50 years, things are going to be even more different than they are today.
Mhm.
And so the hope is you have those seed sources, those genetics as a future kind of
Right.
option for those species. So that's really the idea there, not to the American chestnut, you know, even though it has high survival, that is it's the back cross between Chinese and American, so it's 96% American chestnut, and up here, and it's not 100% like resistant. So they'll survive, but they will ultimately get the blight. So they and I know there's been a history of chestnut doing okay in Williston in the area, so we'll see, you know, over time, but the other issue with those is the parent trees are a couple of chestnuts that were resistant to the blight they found in Virginia. So even if they're not going to get affected by the blight, when we don't have good snowpack, they definitely get like winter injury just because they can't tolerate the freezing.
You hear from the south, happens all the time.
Yeah.
Just a question out of interest, and you can not go too far down this bunny hole. Are there genetically modified, like food? We hear about GMO, like, is that something they do in trees?
For certain species, so and they believe it or not, like American chestnut, they were about to press yes on that. There was a wheat, I think it was a wheat gene that they added to the chestnut that somehow interrupted the ability for the disease to infect it. And then two things happened. One, there was some ethical questioning of it from some of the tribes, just given the importance of chestnut, you know, historically. But the bigger issue was the repeatability of the experiments. There were some people questioning if it truly, you know, had been proven or not. And so it had gone through a ton of review, and now it's on pause. Other parts of the country and the globe where they grow like a lot of plantation species, there's definitely more genetic modification, you know, for wood growth, et cetera. Our part of the world, in most places, they're really relying on like controlled crossing. So with wind pollinated trees, like they'll literally like cover the female flowers and then bring in the pollen they want to put on those flowers from the desired, you know, cross, and so they do like basically, you know, tree breeding that way. So a lot of the genetics work we're doing, or kind of like the genetic thinking, is there's some work that Steve Keller, who's a great geneticist at UVM's done, where we kind of figured out like how far away to get the tree from. So it's different enough that it's going to provide some new genetics, but not too far that it's maladapted to that location. So there'll be enough, there's enough overlap that the tree will do well there. And so that's mainly by like mapping like over space where what the genetics look like, and then like deliberately collecting cones and seeds from those locations. And that's pretty much as far as we go with like controlling genetics. But there is definitely GMO discussion. And you know, from the ethical standpoint, like some of these tree species, if that's the only option to keep them on the landscape, you know, from my perspective, there's no other potential or for very low risk that I would support it. Just because there's, I mean, chestnut, if we could have that still.
Yeah.
Ash in the future. I mean, there's a lot of species, so.
Thanks.
Yeah, no, good question. And then last kind of resultsy thing is the birds. We don't get any credit for this. This is Audubon, Vermont has been monitoring out there in those areas since prior to the experiment. So right before the experiment started, they recorded 21 birds. This last year, they recorded 27, which is the most they've recorded. And it's the first year they picked up kind of 5 kind of new species. So American woodcock, common yellowthroat, mourning warbler, and indigo bunting. Those are birders, which are I hang around with them. I like birds, but I like people that study them at our site. Those are all young forest species. I've learned that over the years. And then wood thrush, which kind of regionally and more across its range is a species of concern that likes more mature forest. That's now showing up. So the reason I like this result, just in terms of the messaging, and certainly Ethan had similar messaging, like certainly we're creating openings, but there's also enough mature structure that's still out there that kind of both guilds of birds are using the area. And so Audubon, Vermont, it's June monitoring. I do not know, to be honest with you, how well they communicate to this. I mentioned to them to communicate, but I'm never copied on that. So
Well, they probably talked to all those bird things
yeah,
about when you walked
everybody's
in.
already out there, yeah. But
What's the big beak? Who knows?
that's the woodcock.
Is it?
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
You might hear them on
You should.
there now. Yeah.
You should see their
Yeah.
dance and their flight.
They're probably, yeah, this is
They're
the time to
calls.
check them out. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
cool. And I don't follow, I didn't crosswalk it, but they're very interested. There's 12 birds. They call the birders dozen that are kind of the species they care about. So 9 of those seem to be showing up, in these areas. And I think scarlet tanager showed up one year, but it's that's responding more to kind of the broader landscape. So
It's great.
So yeah, it's been great to have them on this. So just a timeline going forward, so we won't remeasure the plot, so that you might have less opportunity to see smiling students, so that they won't be out there for, many days remeasuring the plots, but they will do bird sampling again this year. Every year we do monitor the seedlings, so we will be out there doing seedling remeasurements, so all the planted trees. We didn't do any, so in our work, everywhere we plant, we try to look at the influence of not just the species and not just what the forest looks like for cover, but also browse. So we cage you've seen the cages out there. So half the trees are caged, half are not. And then what we also do is kind of remove the competing vegetation around half the trees to see, is that important or not. We haven't done that yet here, partly because it just hadn't grown back enough to make it worth hauling a brush saw around out there. But again, we will make sure we talk with folks about when we're out there doing that. We'll make sure it's not during a camp or something when we have to hear, 2-stroke engines. But they'll start doing that for a couple of years, and then in 2028 we'll actually remove all the cages off of those trees for a couple of reasons. One, they're advertised to photo degrade but that's if it's on the top of a building. In the woods, those don't get enough direct sunlight to really break down, and so the trees end up growing through them, and it's just not good for the trees or good for the forest. So we kind of remove them to limit that influence. And so the schedule of measurements, basically, we're kind of on once we do 2029, we'll do another 5-year measurement, and then kind of move into more of a 10-year, if people still allow us out there, measurement window.
Can you explain what remeasuring the plots means?
So each of those, I should have included a design. So each of those points that are on that map is like an 11.3 meter swing, or a 10th acre area. That every tree on that's 4 inches or greater is measured. We've also tagged all those trees, so we know well, this was tree number 5 and it was alive last time we were here, now it's dead. So we do tag them at the base with aluminum tags. And then we also, because it'd be really hard to measure the smaller vegetation in that big plot, we have basically looks like a peace sign or a turkey foot, spokes. And so there are 3 smaller plots off those spokes that we measure all the seedlings, the understory vegetation, so all the flowering plants. And so what's coming back naturally, the shrubs. Then we also measure how much down wood is out there, the dead wood. I know for some it's an eyesore, ecologically super important. And so we want to understand, how much is out there and how that's changing. So those are the main things we remeasure. And so that's to me, that's like, kind of forestry zen, you're in the same spot for a while and just measuring trees, but it takes a little bit longer and because things change so slowly, it's overkill to measure every year. The planted seedlings, because, writ large, it's growing in interest a lot, but it's still pretty novel to be planting in Vermont's forest, and especially planting like different species like we are. We really want to know, every year, how are things, growing, and especially as we have things like this Mother's Day 2 years ago, that late season frost, things like that, or even, winters with a snowpack, which was 2 years ago, winter didn't start 2 years ago until January, it felt like.
Yeah,
That can be pretty, deadly if you get a deep freeze, on those trees, so the annual piece there is worth it. Same with the birds, bird populations year to year, there are many reasons why they're changing. So having that yearly data is important, so. But so that's kind of the main piece. We don't have, I mean, we haven't done like a community event there since prior to things being cut, so, I wouldn't be spending the day talking about invasive species, but if there was a desire to do a community event, and I wouldn't put, it'd be great if Brandon could be there to meet people, but I'm happy to like help organize something, and maybe we could ask Audubon to be there as well. They have Tim Duclos, who's a great person, but I think it'd be nice because it's been long enough. And I think it'd just be nice to engage community, because because there are 18 events, I think, prior to it being cut, largely.
I was gonna
But
say,
yeah.
it was a big deal before.
Yeah, so I think it'd be, as you all know, I live in Williston, so yeah, it's always, never huge.
I had a question about,
Sure.
I think we talked briefly about your point about not, the competing shrubs, that you're taking to some but not others, but the competing shrubs are likely to be honeysuckle or buckthorn.
Yeah.
And we were like, we don't want 20 years of buckthorn growing in there.
Yeah, from my perspective, if that's the overall goal for the site, for the property, and that's the thing, the way this work was developed, and Melinda was, the partner then from the town. Part of this desired future condition for that forest that we were managing towards included, low level, if not no invasives. So if that's what we're encountering, then we would definitely be open to like more aggressive control of the invasives. For us, the main reason we do it experimentally is, I think a lot of people, like in theory, are like, oh, the forest is going to change, just plant this stuff and it'll be that. And it's like, well, the forest is still going to do what the forest
Right,
does,
yeah. Mhm.
And so oftentimes when we don't control what comes back naturally, a lot of those trees can't compete really well. Or sometimes like that initial competition can be a good thing, because like it's pretty hot and open, and so growing, in that shelter. But I'll look at the data to see what we're seeing right now in that. That's, as you know, that part of Catamount's pretty, from an invasive standpoint, I'd say there's a lower, it's everywhere around
out there, yeah.
but it's a lower load. And to be honest, if we're or if that, not us, if the harvest there is the reason that it's expanding, I think just we probably feel big.
But we certainly haven't gotten our arms wrapped around
Yeah.
for the rest of the forest yet, so
Yeah.
pick on that, but it was just something I remember we brought up last year. It's like, oh, if
Yeah.
we do get our arms around the rest of the forest, we don't want this to be a little island of buckthorn.
Yeah, it's definitely much lighter out there.
Good.
Once you go north Power Cut, some of the trails have some heavy invasive presence on the side, but it drops off as you go north.
Interesting.
For sure.
Yeah, if we ever saw that, what's that new one that's really super aggressive, the new invasive that I can never remember the name of, Chinese something?
Oh,
or-
that's still grass.
Yes, tilt grass, yeah,
Yeah,
Japanese
some-
knotweed.
That's one of, no, that's the ones by the streams, right?
Yeah.
There was something new they were talking about. It's like, I've never heard of that one before, but
Yeah.
Yeah,
if,
there's a
if
bunch.
something were to pop up,
Yeah.
it'd be. Okay,
All right, so just keep an eye on time, maybe, unless there are other questions for Tony.
no, super helpful.
We're gonna be updating our forest management plan in the
cool.
future.
Great.
And if there's any insights that you have based on your research or experience with other community forests, we'd love to hear that.
Yeah.
And we're also in the middle of a conversation about sort of discussing what our purpose is as a committee.
Yeah.
So, we'd love to hear any information that you have about best practices
Okay.
in other places, or just.
Yeah, I'm definitely happy to help with that, and I think even we have our we have a school, we're writing a new management plan for Talcott, so there'll be kind of similar
Oh,
thinking
interesting.
going on in the same, general vicinity and Jess Weichel, she's our school force manager, she's great and could also be a good set of eyes to think through. But yeah, happy to help.
Yeah, and actually would be really helpful because the Talcott one really is just a forest, right? And when we
Yeah.
have trouble since it's a mixed use thing, I think sometimes we lean a little to the recreation, not the forest, so it'd be.
Yeah, and that one is a I mean, definitely, yes, like black locust with invasives under it. I mean, it's got like some pretty challenging area that we recently were pretty aggressive in trying to just. We felt like as a school forest that it was just not a good. I mean, it's good for experiments, but how to deal with the hard things, but
Yeah.
not good for showing like positive stewardship to have this really invasive heavy area. So there's been some work there too that could be useful when you're thinking about like if you're gonna do more control out here. But yeah, happy to help anyway.
And on the flip side, if there's anything you need from the committee,
Yeah,
just let us know.
No, I mean, I
We
said-
love the work that you're doing and, want to advance that as much as we can. And would also love to get the community involved to whatever extent.
Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely follow up on that. I think it's a great idea. Brandon was out there last year, I think he did
Okay.
1 or 2 events. At the time, we were thinking we might be rushing into the last phase of Ethan's plan next year, and that's put off for a couple years.
okay,
But yeah, I'm sure he'd be a great person to pull in
yeah,
the mix.
Brandon's great.
And Tim's great too, so
Yeah.
sounds familiar.
Yeah, so I'm happy to, at least in the near term, we can try to plan an event either in the summer or fall out there. So great.
Cool.
All right, well.
Thank you.
thank
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks for
Yeah,
coming
appreciate
in.
the support. Yeah, my pleasure.
Great work.
See you tomorrow. I'm an admitted student.
Yeah,
today.
see you in the morning.
Kim's gonna talk about you as soon as you.
Yeah, I know. You go
Yeah,
back. I mean, that's a competition for students.
No, I'm not competing with anybody. We're so tiny.
If you don't mind the CCs and emails and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, hope to see you in the fields.
Yeah, that'll do.
Yeah, we'll figure something out.
All right.
Drones can't plant trees yet.
All right.
Trees gotta be
You
up.
should look at out west, they're doing it now with like seeds. They're
Really dropping seeds?
Yeah, in remote areas.
I feel like we should work the saying, you can't see the forest for your trees into your presentation. Somehow,
I know,
I was working, I read.
I know. No, it's hard because
But you can with the
you
drone.
can. Watching. I can see y'all. See you again.
Okay. Thanks again, Tony. All right, so just thinking a little bit about efficient use of our last 20 minutes. I know I knew I had a slightly ambitious agenda. So I kind of.
Well, that was
expected
a great use of time.
that was a great use of time.
Right.
So we have the agenda addition, talking about funding of trails, which sounds like a short conversation. We're looking at Drew's final draft of the governance memo, which is a more robust conversation. We have talking about whether or not Catamount wants to table, whether or not the committee wants to table at Green Fair, which could be short or more robust, depending on if you want to do it. And then the text, which maybe that one is best bumped for next time.
Well, he said it was a 2-minute one, so.
Yeah, well, we'll see, because we don't have too much time. So any thoughts on triage of agenda items here?
So the conversation about having a table is kind of time sensitive,
Yeah.
so that is something we should discuss. I'm not totally aware of what Gene's conversation entails, so.
I think it's
Is
a
that-
high priority.
All right,
Okay,
well,
so
let's do those and
Yeah.
we'll see what we have time.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay,
That's true.
so this just came up at our Tuesday meetings where we're trying to move things forward, which is that the permitting for the master plan for the trails. That are costing an awful lot in fees and I think I had like, it was maybe up to 50, well, it was like $10,000, 10 to 12 or something just for the Act 250 permit. $10,000 to $12,000. And now it's the master plan for all the trails, so it's not like it's gonna show up every year as they do their section, but it's a lot of money. And then they had some stormwater fee maybe for another 2,000, and there was a third one that they just need to go get the numbers for, but the numbers are getting up into like $15,000. And there was a ask if the town could share some of that expense. So we have, and this, we're not deciding this tonight, this kind of just like put it in your head until we get the final numbers and come up with a share concept, I guess, but. We do have $35,000 that. Is in one of our funds.
Capital, yeah,
The
capital.
capital funds for trails. And trails doesn't necessarily have to mean dirt, it could mean. You know, a share for the permits, so, I mean, it seems to me that that would be since they're trails that can be used, you know, pretty broadly, I think that. I would propose that would be a good use of some of our funds to do some of it, doesn't have to be 50-50. It could be something else, until we get the final numbers, it's probably hard to come up with a proposal. But since we hadn't really talked about sharing for Act 250 permits, that I just wanted to like make sure it was, people thought about it. If they had any comments or any thoughts.
I like it.
Yeah.
Does that that money rolls over and we pay into it annually, right? But it doesn't go away if we don't use it by the end of the
Yes,
fiscal year.
yeah, that's the capital fund.
But it also was not renewed. This was sort of one-time funding that we got from the ARPA money, I think.
Right, that particular 35,000.
So it is a set money that, and I think John has got the message too, that if we use this for funding permits, it's not available for buildings, yeah.
So I think what I'd add is that I think the general understanding of the idea around cost sharing this from, you know, in the working group and my temperature check on opinions in the committee is that, you know, there's a strong argument to be made with regards to the trails master plan. You know, if you look at the license agreement, the way that it's written, there are a couple things in there that, you know, Catamount Outdoor Family Center is supposed to be responsible for going out and getting all the permits they need for whatever. Now, it's a fair question of, you know, when that was written, was it understood that the magnitude of what it would cost to do something like this and how it's developed? And it's also a fair question of whether that was kind of a fair policy choice, given the degree to which these trails are a shared resource and the investment in the trails is directly benefit to the town. So with regards to cost sharing, I could see it breaking down in kind of one of two ways. One of which is if you can directly draw on those funds that Jean was talking about for permanents. And there are a couple questions on there. I'd have to work with the finance director of town. There are some rules about use applying capital funds. And they were originally earmarked as part of this ARPA funding, but it has been since rolled into the capital account. So I know that's caused some hiccups. But the other way to think about it would be to look into the bigger picture, you know, for the trails master planning, permits cost this much and trail upgrades cost this much. You know, Catamount kind of put this much out front for permits and there's this much remaining for trails. So given that the capital funds are kind of designed for infrastructure, it may be easier to say, okay, well, Catamount kind of fronted for these permits, the town can kick in more on the back end for the trail construction. That might be an easier mechanism. So there's like kind of two ways that could break down if the committee and, you know, kind of agrees and supports this idea that this should be a shared cost.
Well, it's my thinking, it's a fixed pot of money, right? And so if we use it one way or the other way, as a committee member, I'm kind of indifferent. If it's a lot of money up front for the Outdoor Family Center and we could possibly use it to help defray the fact that they have this big, you know, mouse to swallow as a snake, you know, that would be fine. But for me, it's the same pot of money, so. But I also don't.
The same as like we're providing better trails that are going to be used, that are going to be more resilient and routed around wet spots and be of use to the community for longer. Like it seems like the same community benefit. Right. Like it's just like multiple. It's like, did you pay for the foundation or the shingles? Like, I don't know. I helped with the house.
Yeah. And I don't have a theoretical or any kind of, you know, religious problem with it being for permits versus geotechnical, whatever the material they put down to put the rocks on top of, you know, to me, it doesn't matter.
And there's nothing currently competing for those funds, is that correct?
Not entirely. So the other priorities for those funds that have been are on the list for capital projects are, I think it was upgrades to the Three Rivers Trail. Those stream crossing structure replacements that have been on the list for a while, and a new connector trail from the south to the north parcel. Now, the way that the capital fund is designed to work, though, is, annually you're presenting your list of priorities, but it's understood that it's not a binding list of priorities, because priorities can change. So there's a mechanism, I haven't used it before, but working with the town finance director, I don't know if it's just as simple as submitting a memo or but those priorities can be restructured in response to the needs of the forest. So there are other competing priorities, but that money could still, it's available for this general purpose. It fits the mission of that capital fund. And so it would definitely be within the scope of what we could do, I'd say relatively easily.
Probably none of which of those things we can do without the permits.
Yes.
So when those funds are gone, we're able to go back to the select board and request more?
Yes, so that was one of the two things we looked at during budget season. We looked at the annual budget, which was, by the way, I guess we haven't checked in since budget season passed, but I think there was a request to essentially double it from 3,000 to 6,000. And I think that was cut down to about just 4,000. So the net result is for fiscal year 27. This committee got $1,000 bump, which is still something. Considering all that the select board is trying to balance. So we looked at that, and then we also looked at the capital spreadsheet and those priorities. And there's an annual request attached to how much is it recommended that the select board should be putting into this fund. And I can't recall where that was at, but I want to say that we're recommending somewhere along the magnitude of $15,000 a year to be invested. So I'd have to look at that again, but it is a replenishing fund with respect to everything else that the select board balances in a budget cycle.
I think it was also kind of pointed at the sheep barn though. Like I think.
Exactly, right. Yeah, good point. The sheep barn.
There was like $50,000 that we had got out of ARPA because we're saying like there was certainly the outdoor family center understood that the town had committed to helping with some of those bridges and trails, right? And so we felt that couple years ago, that was fulfilling that understanding between the town and the outdoor family center that it would contribute towards fixing those Three River bridges or whatever. So that's the money to have that in there. And then I think the ongoing capital was about we said, we got the sheep barn thing. So I can't remember what's exactly on that thing, but I don't think it was meant to be an ongoing contribution to trail maintenance or anything, because that is outdoor family center, but it was maybe, like
right.
David said, it can be changed. So.
Yeah, good point. Any comments?
It's a great idea.
So I guess I can just mention, I think the other consideration that I've heard consistently from on the town staff side is with regards to cost sharing. The argument seems to be understood, but one of the questions is, are the trail improvements that are occurring something that the town might do anyways if there wasn't a Catamount Outdoor Family Center, or are they kind of more extreme mountain bike features that are something that is kind of explicitly serving the Catamount Outdoor Family Center program with regards to mountain biking trails. And the reason
I feel like Hans maybe should speak to this, but I was going to say, I feel like from John's presentation to us, the things that stuck out in my head were like bringing the trails up to ADA standards, which is something we do in other natural areas in town, like Mud Pond, or we work with partners like Fellowship that does that. And then two, I think the other, the thing that David knows this is I'm like a broken record on this. It's going to be wetter. We're going to have more flooding, making trails that are going to stand up to snow melt, more rain, more spring precipitation. especially the places that are already wet there. That was part of their improvement plan that I think is like those things are pretty critical for maintaining access. I don't remember, Hans, tell me if this is not true, like places with new features.
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, I think most of it's as good for pedestrians as
Right.
bikers. There's
Yeah.
no like bike crazy things. I mean, there was some like flow trails, some jumps that were gonna be down underneath the power lines. But, you know, I'd say 80% of the whole project is not, you know, crazy bike
Right.
stuff.
Yeah, no, totally. That, I mean, that's my assessment as well, is that these are really kind of trail modernizations in many ways more than they are,
Yeah.
new trail features or anything like that. But I just wanted to present that component to your awareness because that
Reasonable.
comes up, I've heard that question posed from town leadership too, for example, if the proposal was we just want to put in features and jumps and that's what the bulk of the cost is going towards. And the argument for cost sharing from the town, at least as viewed by town leadership, is less.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Keep us informed.
all right, so we'll revisit that. And 5 minutes to town green fair. What's yes or no? The note from Catamount Outdoor Family Center is that they can't participate this year. So there was asked, would the committee be interested in going kind of representing? There's no requirement to do so, not a lot of time to plan, so it's really totally up to you. If somebody is kind of passionate and wants to spearhead that and have a table and go hang out with people and answer questions about Catamount, then great, but it's really your call.
I guess the questions I have are, if we were to have a table, what would we include in it?
Birds.
I think most of the most people would probably be interested in the races and sort of the outdoor family center portion of it.
Yeah, I mean, I would see it, and I can't volunteer. I mean, I'm not volunteering, but, if we had more time to plan something about, this is what you can do with the outdoor family if you don't ride a bike. That might be something more interesting, like, this is where the birds are, and this is where the hikes are, and this is, good and bad times to go to, if it was kind of aimed at that in conjunction with the outdoor family center. But
Is the
right,
conservation table having a?
Conservation Commission will be having a table. They're discussing that at their meeting next week. That'll be focused more on polling people about prioritization for using the ERF and some of their ideas for campaigns for making use of that money on behalf of the town. I mean, for what it's worth, I think Gene, your idea is great. I mean, it sounds like it couldn't happen this year in that form, but I think in the future, at least, if there was, it would be amazing if there was a table where people could go and really you're being for one day, for one morning, being kind of the face of the town forest. And did you know these are all the things that happen here?
if I could find a tree costume, I'd totally do it.
So I do think that could be cool, but I also, there are constraints.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a little short notice, but maybe we try to put it on a work plan for a little earlier in the year next year and think about it in
Yeah.
January or
It
something.
feels like there's two things. One, is anybody available? But two, if you are available, what are you even gonna do?
Right.
I'm not available. That's the gravel ride. But
Which
I was
I
gonna
get
nominate
to,
you,
yeah.
so I guess. I was gonna nominate you. Put the tree suit on.
I don't know, put a sign. Put a sign that says, "Come to Catamount, hug a tree, to gravel ride."
All right, so I'm reading the room and I'm gonna say pass on this year
This
from
year.
the committee. I think that's totally
Yeah.
fine, understood. With our last minute, I'll just say, so Drew drafted a final draft of the governance memo. Did everyone get a chance to read it? Okay, that's right. So we'll table that for next time. We can have a little bit more substantial discussion. I did get a comment from Amanda with just a couple of things, kind of wondering.
On the governance map?
Yeah, looking at the governance memo and remembering that at one time the conversation around governance was a little broader. Is there gonna be a governance memo that pulls in kind of all the partners and all of everything that's involved at Catamount and more along the lines of the long-term work that you described over the last couple of meetings, breaking down all the different roles and who's involved in each. And Amanda was wondering if this memo was supposed to be that, because she didn't see Catamount Outdoor Family Center named in it. And so I just said, from my perspective, this memo as draft is really meant to be kind of an internal guiding document specifically for the committee, really kind of formalizing the way that you've chosen to operate and kind of meet your goals most efficiently in establishing a little more firmly what your specific role is within this ecosystem. And that the rest of that work is kind of the TBD that is coming next. Does that sound right?
Is it easy fix? Just remove the word governance and use a different word?
I think
That's
it's more,
the
it
first
really is the communication.
That's the first that I heard we were using that word. I remember hearing that word before for defining.
Again, yeah, I think we can strike the word memo at this point. I mean, we can call it something completely different.
Grand old document.
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
Well, what I thought it would be, not worrying about wordsmithing it, but it's like if before we launch into that longer work plan list, it would be good if we were all on the same page of what the committee's role was, so that if we start saying like, oh, if we're looking at the other things and decide this is what we should be doing,
Yeah.
like, does that really fit in with our sort of guiding principle of what our role is? Or
Right.
have we, not just are we taking on more than we can do, but maybe are we pushing off work that we should be doing, right?
Yeah. So this document that Dave just brought up, I just made minimal changes from what we had discussed in the previous meeting.
Yeah.
There really weren't a lot of comments. So certainly over the next month, go through it and, scratch it up and provide any feedback that you have. The other document that was attached to the agenda was taking your idea from the last meeting and just focusing on the governance
Right.
aspect.
Yeah.
And I tried to tease out what of those items were specific to us, and then breaking it down all the way into how do we turn this into a work plan, so that every month when we come here, we can say, we need to look at this, this, and this, because it's, all part of the charge that we've been given as a committee. So I think I broke it down according to what you said, and then I took it a step further by kind of saying, this is what it might look like if we were to. So what I can do for next month is go through the other, 4, I think, categories, and sort of break it down similarly, so that when we come in, we can see these are all the things that we're responsible for and what it might look like if we were to operationalize it.
I mean, that would be great, and that's a lot of work on you, and I really appreciate you and Kim both.
Yeah, I
having to
just-
do this, but I also want to think, at least in my head, I didn't want to just make it a checkbox. Yeah. It's more like. There's a couple things where I've said like, yeah, that's not our job, and then I've been convinced, yeah, it really is our job,
Yeah.
so it would be good to actually talk through a lot of those.
Yeah, I yes.
Yeah, so I wouldn't I wouldn't. kill
I'm trying to
myself
do both things, I
Yes.
guess. I don't want to slow us down, so I
Right.
want to be ready for.
for the next, yeah.
The next
Well,
question will be like, so what do we do with it? And then I wanted to have that already ready, so.
Yeah, but I also could be something like our first pass through this might be, we might learn something to say like, well, this was really helpful. The work you did ahead was really helpful here, Drew, but over here, we never used it, or it was something
Yeah.
counter to what the rest of the committee wanted or something.
It's
So,
definitely something meant for discussion,
yeah,
so.
yeah. I have a lot of
um,
invasives on my property if you want to go over and do that instead.
Okay, so that sounds good for next time. So the one last thing that I want to just put in your heads as you pivot from this conversation about role that's kind of in the focus is when that started, one other thing that was on the table was, are you going to amend the charge to remove the requirement that the makeup of this committee has to include someone from the select board, someone from the rec committee, someone from the CC? So just the structure of that committee, does the size of 5 people, does the requirement for the membership from those other committees, does that still fit with this role? So I don't want to lose track of that. I just want to kind of cue that up for you to be thinking about a little bit. are there any elements of that charge that were kind of strict initially that you feel like should be relaxed? Because that was a topics that came up at the start of this conversation. So no answers, we're already 5 minutes over, but I'll just let that percolate along with the other elements for next time. And we'll follow up on the governance memo or whatever name it was. Drew's memo.
Drew's memo.
We all did it.
Follow up on ticks and deer and the continued, a lot of work to do on this committee, which is exciting. So
Good.
Fair.
Last questions, comments, motion to adjourn?
Motion.
To adjourn.
Second.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Bye, Kim.
Bye.
Bye.
What do we need?
Sure, thank you.